All right, today we got a friend of mine all the way from the UK. This man is an artist, a podcaster, a viral sensation, a fitness expert, and so much more. I got my man Zuby. Don't you go anywhere. Hey, yo, what's going on? It's Ruslan with KingsDreamENT.com. This channel exists to encourage, empower, inspire you to live out God's dream. I got somebody with me live. We're in Atlanta for A3C Music Festival. I've been trying to get this brother on the channel for, it's been what, about a month now or so?
Something like that.
And we've been able to make it happen. Zuby, how are you feeling, man?
I'm feeling good, man. A little bit tired. It's late, but you know, we're here. Let's do it.
Let's get it, man. So, Let's jump right into it. You are originally, you're born in the UK, but you were raised in Saudi Arabia, right? And your parents were, your dad was a doctor?
My dad's a doctor, yeah.
Your dad is a doctor.
Yeah.
And you grow up with this interesting perspective of being in a whole other country, but yet you're British, you know what I mean? And you don't have a British accent.
Nope.
So like talk about what was it like growing up in Saudi Arabia and that whole experience, man?
Yeah, no problem, man. So the way I normally summarize it is I'm a British Nigerian who grew up in Saudi Arabia and went to an American school. So when I'm trying to
there you go, right?
When people hear my accent and see where I'm from or whatever, and I'm trying to explain it all in a sentence, that's kind of the most concise way that I can do it.
Okay.
So I moved to. So I was born in England. I moved to Saudi Arabia when I was a baby. When I was one, all my earliest memories are from Saudi Arabia.
Right.
My parents got an opportunity to work out there, so we moved out there. Myself and my 4 older siblings.
Okay.
And so yeah, that's where I grew up. I studied there, went to school there until I was in 5th grade.
Yep.
Then I went to boarding school in the UK for a while. Did really well in school. Got top grades in my class. Went to Oxford University, studied computer science, and worked in the corporate world for a couple years.
Yeah.
2011, I left that to go pursue my music full time, and here we are in 2019. Haven't starved yet.
So dope, man. Now, your family, you're Nigerian. Your family's originally from Nigeria.
My
as well?
family background is originally from Nigeria.
Parents, first generation immigrants, second generation.
That's right. Yeah, first.
Do you think that being Nigerian, having parents that immigrated to the UK and then were working in Saudi Arabia, became doctors, right? High performers, outliers. They sound like outliers. Do you think that you being able to excel and do everything you've been able to do you think that's a byproduct of kind of having that immigrant mentality?
I think it certainly helped. I obviously have, everybody's only got their own background. So I don't know who or what I would have been or done in a parallel universe. In terms of my own personality, I'm someone who is very, very, how would I put it? I'm very strong-minded and strong-willed, and I always have been. That's kind of like an innate personality trait. So I imagine that regardless of what kind of situation I'd kind of found myself into, I would certainly like to think that I would kind of excel regardless, because I'm someone who's pretty hard to influence, especially negatively. So some of that is just my personality. But then, of course, you know, I've got fantastic parents, fantastic family. I've had a lot of opportunities, and you know, lots of the stuff I do in the world is to, you know, try to make the most out of that. You know, make the most of that potential, and to not squander those blessings.
Yeah. And Oxford, which is where you graduated from, that's like your guys' elite of elite. That's like our Harvard kind of, right? Like, is that the
top 5 universities in the entire world.
How was it going through that system, like in graduating with a degree in computer science and then becoming a full-time rapper?
Yeah, so it was kind of weird. So I didn't start rapping until I was in university.
Okay.
When I was in my first year, I started doing music and, you know, found out I was able to rap and had some talent for it. So I developed that and released my first album when I was in my 2nd year of university.
Okay.
And then, the sort of light bulb moment, I guess, when I realized I could do a little bit more with it was after I released that first album and people actually started buying it once I started selling.
What year was that?
That was 2006.
2006. So this is good because there's a lot of aspiring rappers that watch this.
Okay.
So your first record comes out in 2006.
Yep.
You discover you could start selling music, but you didn't go full-time till 2011.
Yeah. So I graduated in 2007.
Okay.
I took a year out and did my music full time for a year when I released my second album, The Unknown Celebrity.
Okay.
But I already had a job lined up in London, but I kind of pushed the job offer back for 1 year. So I was like, cool, I'll take this job.
Yeah.
But I want to go and just do my music and travel around and see what I can do with that.
Right.
So I did that, and then I moved to London. I worked as a management consultant actually for 3 years whilst doing my music stuff on the side. I put out another EP called How I Feel during that time period. And then in I want to say October 2011, I left that, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go and do what I feel I was put on this earth to do. So I left that and took the plunge. Took a big pay hit. Took a big security hit, and just went, you know what, I'm gonna see what I can. If I put all my time and my energy into my music and other creative endeavors, as it's kind of branched out into, then I knew I would. I had a lot of faith in myself. I believed I could do what I wanted to, and so, I also thought, as long as I can survive, as long as I'm not gonna put myself under the water, this is the time to make this move, because I don't have a lot of risks or concerns that may come in 10 years time or in 15 years time or whatever. It makes a lot more sense to do this in my early 20s than to do this in my even early 30s, let alone early 40s.
So. What was your parents' reaction when you're like, yo, you finished Oxford, you're super killing it, and then it's like, hey, mom and dad, like, I think I'm gonna go after this music thing and be a full-time artist?
They said, son, whatever you want to do in this world, we will support you.
That's dope. You got some good parents, bro.
I love my parents. I love my parents to death. My parents are incredible.
Tell me the process of that 4-year process of you started doing, 5-year process. Started doing music in 2006. Go full time in 2011. Right. Most people, they start music, they want to go full time tomorrow. Right. That's like and then that becomes almost like an idol. Like, oh, if I could just go full time. Right. It took you 5 years. It took me a little longer than that. I didn't go full time with music until 2015. So I started around the same time you started, like just taking it seriously, went full time, and that was a long time for me. In the process, I also got married and had a family and all that kind of stuff. Right. What was it about 2011? That made you believe that you can go full time with music? Was it you had a certain number of shows lined up? Was it oh, dude, I just sold 1,000 CDs, 2,000 CDs out my trunk, merch pipe? Well, like, what was popping to the point where you're like, okay, I may not make 100,000 that I would make in the private sector, but I can work for myself and make 20 or 30,000 and survive. What was it?
So I think that by the time I left, I think I'd probably sold maybe around 3,000 or 4,000 albums in total.
Total, everything you'd put out,
everything,
EP,
everything I'd put out. So that by then it would have been 2 albums and 1 EP. I think I'd sold, somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000.
That's great.
By that time, just by going out on the street, just
hustling,
doing the old school street hustle, traveling out to different
cities. Wow, you were one of them dudes like in New York where they run up on you and hand you the CD and then ask you for a donation.
No, I wasn't.
You haven't been to New York yet, so when you get to New York, you'll meet those people in Times Square.
I know
you haven't been to New York? Okay, I'm out on this trip.
And people do it in the UK too. I know I never did it like that. I've always been totally upfront with people.
Okay.
No, I don't. No scammy tactics. I would just, go introduce myself to people.
Okay.
Introduce myself to people, tell them who I am.
Yeah.
Ask them what kind of music they're into. If they're open to it, then I'd have my headphones on me, play them some of the music, let them hear it.
So just one by one, you're just out there hustling one by one.
Yeah, man. I sold over 25,000 albums.
Wow.
Doing that. Yeah, man.
25,000.
25,000.
Physical CDs.
Physical CDs out my backpack.
And this is up until what year? Like up until recently, or up until 2011 you sold 25,000?
Yeah, so this is in total. No, this is in total now.
Okay.
So, I don't go out there and do that now. I haven't had to do it that way now for a little while. But that's really how it all started. So from that 2006 to 2011 period, so I was doing that. So I was building my fan base. I had a few thousand followers online, people checking out my stuff, sold a few thousand albums, performed in a couple different cities, and I think a couple different countries by that stage. So really what happened was 2 things. Number one, both careers were starting to interfere with each other.
Yeah.
Right?
That's usually how it goes, right? You're like, and then you just get to a point where like you can't do both.
Yeah. I was progressing in my music.
Yeah.
I was progressing in my corporate career.
Yeah.
They were starting to negatively have an impact on each other.
Yep.
And I knew which one I wanted to be doing.
Yep.
I was looking, I was one of the younger guys where I worked. I was working with lots of people senior to me in their 30s, their 40s, 50s, even in their 60s. And I was just thinking, okay, in 10, 20, 30 years time, do I want to be this guy? And, no offense to anybody in that world, but the obvious answer was no. This is not what I'm, no, this is not what I'm here for.
Yeah.
God hasn't given me the talents
Yep.
and the mind
Yep.
that I have.
Yep.
In order for me to do this.
Yeah.
The amount of people who I can have a positive impact on in the world
Yep.
doing this is minuscule.
Yep.
Right? There's
Yep.
there's no scale to it. The world's
Yep.
not going to remember me
Yep.
because I climbed the corporate ladder.
Yep.
And even if I did all right, it just wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And I think as a creative person, as someone who's entrepreneurial minded, I'm sure you can relate to that.
Yeah.
Feeling, there's a higher calling, a higher purpose.
Absolutely.
You're wired a certain way that most people are not.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to squander that potential. You want to go out there, build something on your own, and see, okay, it might take a lot longer.
Yep.
The path may be a lot harder. It
Yep.
won't be as linear. It won't
Yep.
be as clearly set out.
Yep.
But in the long term,
Yep.
and also for my own happiness and my own sanity,
Yeah.
this is what I know I need to be doing. So for myself, it wasn't actually a hard decision.
Uh-huh.
A lot of people think it was like a really hard decision, or it took a huge amount of bravery or courage or something. I'm like, no, it didn't. And to be honest as well, I mean, I'm blessed. I know I'm a smart guy. I'm highly educated. I'm not ever going to be out on the street shaking a cup.
Right.
Even if this whole thing went totally horribly wrong,
Right.
what's the worst that happens?
Yep.
I go and I apply for a job and I get another job.
Yep. Yep.
Cool. Maybe I feel like slightly embarrassed, or I feel a little sad I didn't, get to where I wanted.
Yeah.
But fine.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world. So
Yeah, man.
to me, the risk was not doing it. The
Right.
risk would have been, man, imagine if I stay here and in 15 years time, I'm in my mid 30s or like my late 30s, and I'm kind of like, man, like I was good at. I'll be that guy telling everyone, I used to rap.
I
Like,
used to rap.
I was a good. I was
You're
actually
the old guy telling everybody
I
used to rap.
and people are looking at you like, you really? Nah, you were. So I was like, man, I've got to at least try, man.
Yeah.
Like, let me go and do this.
Yeah.
And with me, it wasn't even about trying. I knew I'd be successful at least to some degree. To what level I will reach, I still don't know. I was still climbing. I don't know what. There's many, many, many more levels I can go. And so to some people, I'm already successful. So I don't necessarily, by my own standards, consider myself successful yet, because I know what I'm capable of.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I know that I'm on the path. I'm
Yep.
on the right track. I've
Yep.
done certain things, especially considering I've done it totally independent.
Yeah.
Being on first British rapper on Joe Rogan. Selling as many albums as I have, building a following of over 200,000 people on social media.
Yeah.
5 million plus views on YouTube, whatever it is. It's like, man, like I've done that. I don't have a manager. I don't have an agent.
Yeah.
I don't have a team. I don't have a label. I'm
Yeah.
just me.
Yep.
So
That's so dope, man.
Thank you, man.
That's
Thank
so
you.
dope. And I believe it. If you look back in hindsight and you see the providence of even your journey going to school, learning what you learned, your education, like all that worked together to get you to being an entrepreneur and to being a creative.
yeah. And I think some people are just wired, and people are wired in different
Yeah.
ways. Most people are not wired to be entrepreneurs.
Right.
That's the reality. I think some people have this misconception that most people are entrepreneurs and most people. It's like, no, most people are not creative and most people are not entrepreneurs. No, it's true. Most people aren't creative.
No, you're totally right. It's
People
just
have this
it's
idea,
sad
like,
though, because
no,
it's not entrepreneur. You want everybody. I want everybody
Yeah,
to be
sure.
entrepreneurial
Yeah.
because I see the upside. Like
Yeah.
I see like if I'm providing a service for somebody in the market and they're paying me $20 an hour, that means I'm worth $40 an hour. But if I could take that same skill applied to my own vision and build that up, then it could be worth more than just $40 an hour, because then I own the entire product.
Yeah.
So I think you're totally right. It just bums me out when you have that.
I'd
like
imagine
that.
you have quite a high degree of risk tolerance, though, just in terms of your personality. I think so. To be an entrepreneur, you kind of have to.
Yes and no. So I don't know if I told you this. So me and my wife, we went through a Dave Ramsey program where we paid off all of our debt.
Okay.
We paid off $45,000 in student loans and car notes, and I mean, and prior to this, like I was not good with money. I didn't come from money. I didn't, just rough, financially illiterate.
Yeah, sure.
And I was able to. So because we did that, we paid off all of our debt. Then we saved 6 months of living expenses, and then we had a kid. And so, for me, my son was the one that was like, all right, what are you going to do with your life, dude? You know, because you can keep
really?
going that way.
Okay.
Yeah, not like he didn't say that to me, but having a
I was gonna
kid.
say.
No, having a kid.
but bold.
Having a kid. He was a baby.
Yeah.
That
would've been even
that would
better.
have been crazy, right? It's just like,
It's like, yo, Dad.
Dad, what you doing with your life, yo? Having a kid was that fork in the road moment. But I had 6 months of living expenses in the bank. I didn't have any debt. Our overhead was next to nothing. All we had was rent, food. You know what I mean? So yes, I'm willing to take risks, but I had enough momentum and I had enough passive income coming in that it worked out.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I don't know if now I definitely have more risk, but I'm definitely not like betting my whole family.
When I
you know what I mean?
when I say a high risk tolerance, I don't mean being reckless.
Yeah, okay.
I don't mean being reckless.
That's good.
What
that's
I
good,
mean
that's
is
good.
most people, simply the thought of not being employed
Yep.
or not knowing
Terrifies
exactly.
them.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's the norm.
Yeah.
That's the norm. So I don't mean like, just go crazy or whatever, have a family and just quit everything you're doing and just go try something crazy. That's not what I mean. But I'd imagine if you, I don't know.
No, that's good. That's good. I think you did a lot of this. Well, you did the work. Like you literally went out, did the work.
Yeah.
You hustled. You sold CDs hand by hand. And this is before. I don't know if you envisioned. I didn't envision myself doing a podcast and being onto all these different things.
Yeah.
Did you back then envision yourself as like, I'm gonna be an influencer, a podcaster, write a book, right? You wrote the book, and so now you have your hand in so many different things where you basically you scaled and you essentially stacked your talent. You know, you a rapper, then you transition into just being really good on social. Now you're podcasting, then you wrote a book, right? And you just kind of kept leveling up. Did you see that when you thought, I'm going for the music full time?
No, I didn't. No, I just saw the music. Music. I mean, prior to doing music, actually, when I was a kid, I always wanted to be a cartoonist. So I've always had that creative side there. And then that switched into music in my sort of late teens, early 20s. So no, I didn't have that vision initially. But a couple of things sort of led down that line. So I would say part of the first one would have been the changes in the way that people consume music and media and, some of the technological advances. So when I started out, in terms of social media, it was just MySpace. And then
I remember MySpace.
Yeah, it was just MySpace, and almost everybody was still buying physical CDs. So I was like, okay, cool. My goal was just about selling CDs, selling CDs. Like that was the model, simple.
Yep.
And then it kind of got to a stage where downloading started coming in, let alone streaming. And each time that kind of disrupted the world, that disrupted the music world very heavily. So I thought, okay, I need to have a rethink. I need to diversify more. I need merch. I need to sell T-shirts. I need to sell hats. I need to do that. And merch has been my bread and butter for the past 4 years or so.
Okay.
Right.
So primarily merch is like definitely keeping you going.
Yeah. Certainly over the last 4 years.
Okay.
And
your merch is dope too. Like the Team Zuby
thanks, man.
stuff is
Thank
just
you.
fly.
Yeah. People always joke about me wearing it all the time, but
Joe Rogan is like, yo, why did you wear your? I'm like, what do you mean? If I'm coming on the biggest podcast in the world, I'm absolutely wearing my own merch. Should be happy my name isn't tattooed on my face.
Yeah, and it definitely worked because then he talked about it on his podcast with Bill Burr too.
Yeah.
So it definitely the fact that it makes people talk is kind of
it's brilliant.
But it's just
so entrepreneurial, like especially if you're coming from a hip hop space. Because we grew up in the same era where everybody had a clothing line.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like not just merch, they had clothing line,
lines.
Rockaware, State Property. So I think it's brilliant. You really went viral. You had done this is crazy. Like you've done all this stuff. You sold 25,000 or whatever. I don't know how many you sold at that point, but you sold thousands of records. Had been full-time for a number of years doing music, surviving off your merch, selling CDs. And then how long ago was it where you go viral on Twitter and everything just 10X's for you?
February 26, 2019.
So I'm giving you guys the timeline because so many of you guys are so impatient. Zuby, you start rapping in 2006.
That's right.
You go full-time 5 years later.
Yep.
Then, 8 years later, you really, really get your just 10X explosion, right? I don't know how I started following you. I think you maybe followed me through the Brandman Sean thing you had told me earlier. Yeah. So I started following you, and I remember looking at your numbers, and you probably had like 15,000, 20,000 on Twitter.
Like that,
And then I looked up, and all of a sudden you're like at 70,000, and I'm like, what is going on? You know what I'm saying? And you're also one of the verified accounts that follows me. So then I kind of see your stuff more. I feel like Twitter kind of rolls that. So
135,000 now. Just hit that.
let's go. So what I love about it, one, from a timing standpoint, like, you are not an overnight success.
Oh, no.
Right?
No.
You're not an overnight success until you're an overnight success. And everybody's like, who's this Zuby British rapper? I'm from London. I've never heard of him, right?
Yeah.
Like, everybody's all mad. But so you go viral with this video. I think the video is hilarious. Talk about the video, because I think it's so brilliant. Because I think what you did is you continued scaling.
Yeah.
CDs aren't selling. You know what I'm saying? As they used to.
Yeah.
I got to do merch. I got to pivot to merch, right? Oh, but, attention, conversation, to dialogue. I don't think you were necessarily thinking, oh, this is going to go viral. I think you were just being yourself. But a lot of times the stuff that goes viral is the times you're being yourself. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And even Gary Vee tonight said, you go viral by just trying over and over again.
Yeah.
So talk about that. Talk about like what led into that. Got that video exploding, and then we kind of talk and share about the video.
No problem, man. So really, a big shift happened in 2018, where I just, for multiple reasons, including partially just the way I felt that the world was going, I started to just do a little more social commentary and reveal more of myself, right? So all throughout those first 10, 11 years of my career, I would always do my best, try to not rock the boat. I didn't want to polarize anybody. I didn't want to put out any opinions out there that are too strong, anything political, anything social, anything cultural that might be seen as, potentially divisive or controversial or contentious, anything. I was like, I'm just going to stay away from that. I've always discussed it in private with people and had, kind of deep discussions around certain issues. But I kind of just felt like I need to lend my voice to certain conversations. So I started doing that a little bit more in 2018.
Yeah.
And in 2018, I gained, several thousand followers through some of that social commentary stuff.
So you're going from what? So can you just throw out some numbers? 2018,
Yeah,
you're
sure.
at
So-
10,000 followers, and you grow how many?
Yeah, so maybe beginning of 2018, I was maybe around 9,000.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
maybe by the end of it, around 15,000, something like that.
So that's still great growth. I mean,
Yeah.
you still grow by 50%.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. That's on Twitter. And then, I just started, as I've gotten older and more mature, and, and as other stuff has changed around me, I've just become a lot less concerned about
What people think and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like simultaneously really caring about what people think who are close to me or who know me, my friends, my family, my even my fans and supporters. I greatly care about what people think about me in that regard. But in terms of people who already don't like me or kind of think they don't like me or oppose me on certain things, it's like I don't care.
Yeah, what does it really matter?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Right.
And there are certain things, like I don't feel like I need to put absolutely everything on my brain out there or express every single view and opinion and thought that I have. Like that can be a little bit reckless. But if it's something that I do feel is important, why should I shy away from this thing?
Yeah.
Right? That's not being authentic. If I'm seeing other people, especially if you've got someone out there, shouting very loudly about something that I actually oppose.
Yep.
Why should I just acquiesce and be silent in return?
Yeah.
It's like, no, actually, this is what I think.
Yeah.
Let me lend my opinion.
Yeah.
And by doing that, I found that I've emboldened and inspired a lot of other people. I mean, the amount of, you see some of the emails and DMs I get is crazy. Some from some pretty prominent people.
You got to tell me that off the record.
Yeah. So I get so many messages like, man, like I love what you're doing. You know, like your voice is so important and so powerful. So people have seen that, and then that kind of culminated earlier this year with the video where I posted where I said that I identified as a woman, and I posted a video of me deadlifting 230 kilos and breaking the British women's deadlift record.
That is amazing. That tweet was written so well, where you was like, "Yo, I identify as a woman for this 9 seconds.
Yeah, it was like
I broke it. Don't be a bigot. Like they were like, don't be a bigot.
Yeah, it was like I keep hearing about how there's no biological difference between men and women in 2019.
Yeah.
So watch me destroy the British women's deadlift record without trying. P.S.
Yeah.
I identified as a woman while lifting the weight. Don't be a bigot.
So good.
And it just, I tweeted this about 10 a.m. in the morning,
Yeah.
UK time. By about 11 a.m., it had hit about 50,000 views.
Whoa. That's quick.
And it was really, like, as soon as I tweeted, it just started flying. Like, the numbers were just flickering up. The likes and the retweets, it was just going up in real time.
Wow.
And I was just like, oh my gosh. And then it started getting retweeted by accounts with 500,000 followers, 1 million followers, 2 million followers.
Wow.
I saw it get retweeted by Piers Morgan and Coulter.
Yeah.
Just like
That's amazing.
like different countries, they're just like, oh my gosh. And it was entering all these realms. It was entering like the political realm, the sports realm, like MMA fighters were retweeting it just bodybuilders were it just started going out into all these places, and I was just like, oh my gosh. By the time I went to bed that night, it was on 300,000 views. I wake up in the morning at 600,000, and it just went bananas. It went bananas, and then the BBC started, like, I started getting messages on my phone from like, oh, I'm from this radio station. We want to talk to you about your viral tweet. I just started getting all these messages and stuff, and then so that just kept growing. I mean, I was gaining about 100 followers an hour for several weeks.
Wow.
100 followers an hour on Twitter. So every day, like I grew from. When I tweeted it, I had 19,000 followers, and within a matter of weeks, I'd cracked 50,000.
Wow.
And it just kept going and going, and then I started doing media appearances, and then Joe Rogan talked about it on his podcast. Then it was on Fox News, and it was on Sky News, and it just kept growing and growing. And what's really important, I think, to point out here is that stuff goes viral on Twitter all the time, but most people that happens to, they aren't able to do anything with it because they don't have anything beyond that particular thing they said,
and
which
you
happened to
had
go viral.
a decade and a half
Exactly.
of not just music, but of experience of being an entrepreneur and running a business.
Exactly. So once that drew people's attention to me, but once the attention was there, people were like, oh, he raps. Oh, I like this guy's music. He does a podcast. This is interesting. Oh, he's done this. Oh, he's doing that. Oh, he's just interesting and funny on Twitter.
Right.
So a lot of people just started following me
because
they saw that there was much more beneath the surface. So I was able to just use that to continually grow my audience and to find new opportunities and to get invited onto different podcasts and radio shows and TV shows. And opportunities just kept coming. And it's been a bizarre 6 months in a lot of ways. I mean, even me being in the US right now, had it not been for that moment, it's unlikely that was kind of like the first domino in terms of what's happened this year.
Yeah.
So,
that's so cool, man. And what I like about it is some of what I'm gathering is like you became more personal and more vulnerable with some of your views that maybe weren't as popular.
Sure.
And you owning those views and owning that truth ended up being the very thing that catapulted you to another wider, broader audience. And sometimes people are on social media and they're afraid to go there. They're afraid to go against the grain or swim against the tide. But I think most times that's usually the stuff, or at least on a platform like Twitter, that's the stuff that usually ends up being disruptive to cut through, So I think that's super dope. And I just remember, just seeing you on my timeline. I'm like, yo, this dude is interesting. He's talking about fitness. He's talking about this. He's talking about that. And you were just unapologetic in your views. You know what I mean?
And I break a lot of the rules that people have. Sometimes people are like, oh, just niche it down, just do one thing, just focus on the music, or just focus on the fitness, or just focus. And I'm like, nah, man,
I hate that.
That's not me.
Yeah.
That's not me. It's like I've been giving people the music for over a decade.
Yep.
Like I'm gonna give you now some more of my personality. I've been going to the gym longer than I've been rapping.
Yep.
Like, why don't I put out some fitness content?
Yeah,
right? That helps people.
Yeah.
My goal is to inspire and motivate other people. What better way than, look, if you want to lose weight, I can help you lose weight. If you want to build muscle, I can help you. I love helping people out, as long as they want to take that first step and actually want it.
Yeah.
So I thought, what else can I offer people? Well, I can use my voice in other ways. People seem to like my podcast. People like my interviews. I've done some public speaking this year. So why should I limit myself to just doing one or two of these things?
Absolutely.
I'm able to write. Why don't I write a book?
Yep.
I know fitness and I know how to write. Why don't I write a fitness book?
Yeah.
And I put that out there and that helped people. So the way I look at things now is it's just kind of open up. I view it like a metaphor. So if I imagine I've kind of got like a house, like the Zuby house, Team Zuby house, then like, the music is the front door. And I was always wanted people to come through the front door. And I didn't want anything to distract from the front door. I didn't want people to even know there were side doors.
This is a great metaphor. You dropping some gems here.
Yeah. And then, so with what's been happening this year is people have been coming through the side door, through the back door, discovering me through, I discovered you on the Ben Shapiro show. I heard you on Joe Rogan. I saw your funny tweet. So as long as people are kind of coming into the house and there's lots of different things on offer in the house, then I'm like, cool, I don't really care what door you come in through. The music might still be the main front door, but I know I've got people who follow me, not specifically for my music, but for other reasons. And I've just learned to accept that, that's cool. That's fine. Why I can't, if I can offer some value to someone or some entertainment or some education to someone, they don't need to have everything that I'm offering. If they want it, fantastic. That's even better. But if they just want to pick and choose, that's fine.
That's good. That's dope, man. I love everything you just described. I relate to it personally. Hence, we're doing a podcast at A3C Weekend. I'm here for a rap show, but I'm doing a podcast. I just got a text message from the homie 1K Few about doing another one tonight, which is, I don't know if you tired. I might have to be up for a couple hours. He's talking about a poolside interview in the middle of the night. I'm like, what is this going to look like? Anyway, I feel you, and I think that's dope. I believe what you described is the new model. I believe what you described, what Joe Rogan is doing, is what is Joe Rogan? Is he a podcaster? Is he a comedian? Is he an influencer? Is he a TV host? He's all the above. He's whatever he wants to be, and I think you spent a decade just figuring out how to hustle music. And then you spent additional time doing other things. And so I think people can do multiple things as long as they're willing to put in the work to say, I'm going to spend a window of time just working on this, then I'm going to pivot, then you know what I mean? And I think you've done a great job of that. You, my friend, would you identify as a black conservative? I know you don't like labels. You're like a. You are a Christian and a rapper, but you're like a Christian rapper who doesn't want to be called a Christian rapper. You're like, I don't like the label Christian rapper. You know what I'm saying? Are you a black? Can we say you're a black conservative?
What I identify as is gender and politically fluid.
You had a quote that bar you had on the Joe Rogan where you said. Gender is fluid, but politics is binary.
I said it's funny because we're living in a time where people are saying that gender is fluid, but politics is binary.
That's a great quote.
It's
a great quote. And I'm probably politically pretty agnostic. You know what I'm saying? I'm registered as an independent. I voted libertarian last time. This time I'm on the Yang Gang, of course, which we could talk about. Is it fair to say you're a black conservative, or just give me some type of framework?
Am I black?
You're brown. My son will call you brown. That's funny. My my son Levi calls everybody
technically
brown.
That's a lot more accurate, isn't it?
It is.
We're all varying shades of brown.
Yes.
If people got that through their heads, the world would probably some of the nonsense would probably cease a little bit. But would I call myself a conservative? I don't mind what people want to call me. I'm certainly conservative leaning in some aspects, both economically and socially, I guess. But ultimately, I'm just I call myself a free thinker. I just like to.
But the MAGA hat people love you.
The MAGA hat.
Let's be honest. Let's be real. They love Zuby because it's the dichotomy of here's someone that's a rapper who's black, whatever, right? That you're Nigerian, and you. Sometimes come off very sympathetic and supportive of the current president of the United States.
Wow. I don't know. I think you're putting words in my mouth a little bit. But
you like Trump. Is that fair to say? Like if you were to vote in the next election, you'd probably vote for Trump.
If I were an American, would I vote for him? Is that a question? Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
But that's also largely about the opposition, who I think are awful. So
lesser of two evils.
Yeah, I don't even think he's an evil. I think he's necessary.
Okay.
I think he's necessary. In terms of if I like him, it's kind of, I like some stuff he's done. I don't like some stuff he's done and said, but it's not as viewing him in a vacuum doesn't really work for me because, people are like, oh, how did this guy win? I'm like, well, what was the other opposition? What was people forget already how much people didn't like Hillary Clinton and stuff. So I don't want to get too much into that. Yeah. But man, look, I don't mind what people just describe me as. Politically, I'm certainly, if I do any kind of political compass test, I fall into the center-right libertarian sort of quadrant. So whatever views that generally entails. But ultimately, I'm pretty pragmatic, and I've just got I do have certain values and morals and principles that I strongly believe in, and which I try to apply equally to all people in various situations. I don't like people who are kind of I don't want to say I don't like people. I don't like this idea of, having lots of like double and triple and quadruple standards where, you're treating people differently based on various things, or, oh, it's okay if someone does that, but it's not okay. I just try to apply all these things equally to people, kind of across the board, because that's to me what I believe is fair, and what I believe is honest, and what I believe is right. So I'm open to, one of the things I do certainly is I try to bridge gaps as well. I mean, I remember specifically in 2018, because I had a particular tweet go viral, which was one of the tweets that it was retweeted by I'll give him a shout out actually. It was retweeted by Mike Cernovich, who I don't know if you know, but he's got about half a million followers, and he was he's got a lot of Trump supporters follow him. He was fairly key and influential in that election in 2016, and he's followed me for years. So he retweeted one of my tweets, and off the back of that, I started getting tons of followers with like MAGA in their profile, right? And it just kind of out the blue. I was like, whoa, what's going on here?
We got a lot of MAGA supporters and
yeah.
fans here on this channel.
It's all love, right? And then so it was funny because I remember in 2018, people saw me, some people, even in the music world in the UK, kind of saw me interacting with all these Trump supporters and stuff. And people were like, I had some people like, oh, like almost trying to police me, kind of like, oh, don't talk to them. Like, why are you talking to Trump supporters? Why, this weird, super intolerant from, people who claiming to be tolerant.
Yeah. The irony, right?
Yeah. That irony of saying, don't even talk to, why are you even talking to that person or whatever? Like, how dare you? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, this is... these are not all...
Are people at this point assuming that you're like the typical rapper, like left-leaning person? Or
I don't even think so.
People were saying this already knew you're
what? I've never... My politics... I'm not someone who like kind of was, like, oh, I was a super lefty and then I got red-pilled and I became right-wing or something. Like, no, I've always been kind of where I am. All that's happened is I've become a little bit more libertarian. Even from... Like I've been I was always apolitical, like in my teenage years. But if someone were to ask me what I think is right or wrong, or give me some kind of political test, I probably would have fallen again in the center right side of things, because there are just certain principles and values that I have that I just think are correct, and some of those fall more on that side. For example, even when I was 16, if someone said, "Oh, do you think like rich people should be taxed more?" I'd be like, "No, that's not fair. Why would you take more money from someone who's worked for it?" Like that doesn't, just like it doesn't make sense to me now. It didn't make sense to me then.
When you say tax more, you're specifically meaning
like a
higher percentage.
Yes, exactly. I like if someone was like, "Oh, do you think it's fair to tax a millionaire or at even 50%?" I'd be like, "No, I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair now. I didn't think it was fair then." Whereas other people are like, "Oh no, you tax them at 70% or whatever," and I'm like, "No, that doesn't strike me as fair." It's basic.
Yeah, the tough part about the taxes thing is that the higher you tax them and the more you create that like sliding scale. Like I get the logic behind it, but what tends to happen, I think, is that there becomes a lack of respect for the laws. So then entrepreneurs and wealthy people just kind of do a little gymnastics. So it's like now not only are you taxing them potentially unjustly, but now like this whole Green New Deal where it's 70% progressive tax on people making over 10 million, right? Like people are just going to figure out how to avoid that, right?
Yeah, people will avoid it, but beyond that, I think it's immoral.
Yeah, well I'm saying I think it sets... because it's potentially immoral, I would say probably immoral, I probably agree with you, it sets a precedent to just finesse and break the code. You know what I mean? So it's like, why not just tax people in a way that's, I guess, more fair and balanced? You know what I mean? So that because if we look at it, nobody's probably paying 50% of their, you know what I mean? Like truly paying 50% of what they take home. They're probably 30, 35 at the most. You know what I mean? So just make the highest tax rate there, you know what I mean, and kind of balance it out. So Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I've been thinking a lot about like taxes and like what's the best way to do taxes.
Sure.
One of the things I appreciate about you is that you're very individual above community, like we talked about earlier. And I think that has a lot to do with your framework. And I think this is also true in Canada, where you were like, it's like in the UK, you told me like in the UK, we don't have like a black community.
No.
Like we have Nigerians and different people, and it's the same thing in Canada. Here in America, there seems to be or appear to be, I guess a unified, not that's even a generality, but there seems to be more of a black community, kind of based on the collective historic trauma that black people have endured in America.
Sure.
You're very much so about the individual responsibility choices, which I'm with you on. Do you think that your view is reflected, though, based on your experience, in that because you are Nigerian, who was raised in Saudi Arabia, UK citizen, and therefore you don't see much of a black community that's kind of attached to the collective trauma and experience that black people have had in America?
I mean, I don't even believe in collective trauma.
Okay.
I don't. Yeah, I would question.
So do you think like the Holocaust was? I mean, that's pretty fair. That's collective trauma, or like Armenian people. There was a genocide of 1915.
I mean, I know what you mean. I know what you mean by it.
Yeah.
But
because like Armenians
it.
definitely feel collective trauma.
Sure.
Like 1915. April, it's a thing. Like we talk about it,
Okay.
and it's a thing,
Gotcha.
right? And I think the Jewish people, they still talk about the Holocaust. It's
Yeah.
like Holocaust museums and all that kind of stuff. Armenians are, till this day, Turkey will not acknowledge that as a genocide, and that till this day has issues because America is an ally of Turkey, and
Sure.
it just gets very confusing. And the reason why me and my family came out here as refugees was because of the pogroms of Baku, which was an overflow of the situation from the 1915 genocide on the
Sure.
Armenians, right? The Aussies essentially attempted a genocide on the Armenians. They pushed us out of Azerbaijan. That's why we came here. So we definitely have a degree of acknowledging and remembering our collective trauma. And sometimes I think some of the positions or the pundits, I'm not saying this is your view, but
Sure.
from the right can be very dismissive of the black experience of black trauma in America, right? We're okay with Jewish people talking about the history that they endured and trauma they endured. We're okay with Armenians. For the most part, I've never had somebody tell me, you're living in the past. How dare you acknowledge the genocide of 1950? That was 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Stop complaining. But when it comes to black people in slavery, or when it comes to black people in Jim Crow, when it comes to black people in whatever, redlining, the war on drugs, there tends to be this like very dismissive, just get over it. At least in America. I mean, I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Sure. I think it's kind of nuanced, man. So I think that, I think regardless of people's political positions, I've certainly, I mean, unless you maybe we're talking to some like super white nationalist or something, like, legitimately far right kind of thing. I don't think nobody I'm aware of, certainly nobody decent, denies or tries to diminish any historical injustice, whether you're talking about slavery, whether you're talking about the Holocaust, whether you're talking about the army.
I mean, I think people here.
Really?
My white friends are my conservative white friends can be very non-empathetic in the whole like, that was hundreds of years ago. Like, move on. But what about?
Well, I'm
you know
like
what I mean?
that, so maybe.
Yeah, but I mean, again, we wouldn't say that to a Jewish person or to an Armenian person.
Yeah, but Jewish people aren't blaming. Jewish people who exist now, people acknowledge the Holocaust. Everybody acknowledges this was an awful, terrible thing that happened. But for a Jewish person who is 18 years old right now and who never lived through it and whose parents didn't live through it, maybe their grandparents did, right? Then they're generally, I don't like to generalize, but in most cases, they are not using that as any kind of excuse for their, I was going to say their current situation. They're generally like crushing it as a group, but they're not using those. They're acknowledging that and remembering that, but they're not using that as a first. They're not using it as a weapon, as a cudgel against other people, and they're not using it as any kind of excuse for their own personal failings or behaviors or actions.
Do you think that that is what's happening in the black community, though? Because I think
some people are.
okay.
Some
okay.
people are.
Some people are.
I'm not saying everybody. Again, I'm an individualist, so I don't
yeah.
want to try to paint some broad brush about millions and millions of people.
I can't say if some people
some
are.
people
I
are.
definitely think that there is a desire for an acknowledgement of these things, which, as far as I know, it took hundreds of years for America to even apologize for slavery, like to come out and publicly be like, yeah, that was messed up.
Did every other country? What about every other country in the world that?
I mean, I can't speak for every country. I just know here. You know what I mean?
But see, the thing with even the slavery conversation is every race of people that I'm aware of has both been slaves and held slaves historically, right? And America was one of the first places where when people think of slavery, they always think of American slavery, even though that America isn't even the place that had the most slaves. There are far more slaves in Brazil than there were in America, for example. So, but whenever people say slavery, they always think specifically of black people being enslaved in America, which is, absolutely happened and is acknowledged. That's in history.
Yeah.
But there was slavery going on in Africa. There was slavery going on in the Caribbean. There was slavery going on in South America, in the Arab world,
absolutely,
all over, in Europe.
Yep.
Okay, the word Slav, slave itself from Slav, right? Slavic people. So I find it weird to always the focus is always so much in on that without the sort of wider context of like, okay, well, hang on, if we kind of zoom out here, this was like a huge global human issue. So this is not like to dismiss anything or to be diminishing of everything, but there's only so much acknowledgement that you can do, right? And continuing to acknowledge something and acknowledgement is important to learn lessons and say, okay, let's not. Humans have done a lot of terrible crap in the past. Like let's not do this again. Let's not do this stuff again. Okay. But if something did happen 100 years ago, and you didn't live through it, and your parents didn't live through it, then to still be using that as, it's. I mean, I'm not a hyper emotional person. So I'm not someone who gets caught up in the emotion and the feelings of like, oh, let me spend all this time, acknowledging your feelings and acknowledging your like. Ultimately, it's like, look, what actions?
Sure.
What's the situation now, and what actions will make things better, both individually and collectively as a society?
Yeah. No, and I'm with you. I think that the tough part is though, like my mother-in-law and father-in-law did live through the war on drugs.
Okay.
Which was, I mean, if you go and pull up some of them Nixon and Reagan things that have leaked recently, was a war on black people and hippies. Okay. You know what I mean? Like that's came out. You know, like it is what it is. So it's like, so yes, slavery hundreds of years ago. I'm talking about 80s. I'm talking about the CIA on the record coming out and being, yeah, we were complicit. We knew that this coke was coming in, and we looked the other way because that was funding, the rebels to fight communism in Nicaragua, right? All that stuff is documented, and then the harsher sentences on the disproportion of how crack users were sentenced versus coke users, right? Which
wasn't that decided by. Wasn't it black people who came up with that decision? I believe.
I think there was definitely black people involved in that, but I don't know if black people were legislating. I don't know if they were they were the ones legislating, but there was definitely black people that were pushing for that for sure. So what I'm saying is like this is stuff that's.
So I think it's the same.
30 years ago.
So I think it's the same with crystal meth versus what's the less stodgy version of it. I can't remember.
I don't know what the less stodgy version of it is. But yes, crystal meth definitely gets sentenced harsher. But again, then that's a poor man's drug, right? Versus that's what coke, I mean. Guys on Wall Street use coke.
Yeah, exactly.
Very high rates, and they're not getting sentenced at the same rate that crystal meth. But then people say, well, it's because of the way that this drug affects the neighborhoods and this and this and that.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, we've had my own parents, you know what I mean, have been harshly sentenced and have done a lot of jail time over stuff that was happening in the white community. And I'm not talking about violent crimes, you know what I mean? And so I think that's the stuff. So then when we're talking about generational wealth, right? The best way we know to have a shot at building generational wealth is growing up in a household with both a loving mother and a loving father.
Of course.
that was the undone. A lot of that was disrupted in the 70s and the 80s, and the ability to buy real estate and pass it down.
Yeah.
That was disrupted. And
Sure.
redlining, I'm not sure what year redlining was. So yes, people are individuals, but these things didn't happen in a vacuum.
Yeah,
The stuff
sure.
that the black community faced here in the 70s, the 80s, the war on drugs. I think they even tried to do a war on poverty. You know what I'm saying? Like, this stuff was heavy, man. And
Yeah,
so
sure.
I think it is nuanced. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it
it's
is
nuanced. Look, the easy. I acknowledge a lot of things you're saying, and I've spoken to a lot of people who talk about these things. Thing with me is I look forward, not backwards. So, like if I'm like, okay, cool, like yes, like okay, now what? That's where I'm at.
Yeah,
You
and
know
I'm
what
with
I mean?
you. I'm with you.
That's very much where I am. So people can talk about all of these issues, historical injustice. That can be done.
Do you think the
in any
average
nation.
conservative,
Yeah.
Republican, Trump voter has the temperament and the level of empathy to even acknowledge it?
I don't know.
Okay, because that's not the vibe.
I don't know.
Like that's very much so not the vibe. The vibe, it's like a traumatized woman who was in a relationship with an abusive man, and we want healing and restoration.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And instead of saying like, all right, well yes, that was terrible. That should not have happened to you. That was bad. Let's get you on your feet. It's like, let's move on. You know what I'm saying? Let's just move on. Figure it out. Get going. Pull yourself up by your
Yeah.
bootstraps.
I feel like
you know what I'm saying?
that's-
Without an acknowledgement of the trauma.
I think that's a caricature. I think
What's a
that's like a
caricature?
caricature of conservatives.
Maybe.
I'm not saying
Yeah,
I'm
maybe.
not saying there's nobody like that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there's nobody
saying,
like that. I think that's a
I don't know the percentages.
Sure.
From my interactions and my
Okay.
experiences, it tends to be pretty high.
Look, the reality is, I mean, you need both. People need both, okay? Because I'm someone who leans much more to the rational and the logical than to the emotional. That's just my personality. I'm in the like
Same as mine. Yeah.
that's my personality.
Yeah.
So, and that's not everyone's. And as I think if you were to do personality tests, conservative leaning people tend to fall a little bit more on that side and a little bit less towards the kind of
The empathy and the emotion.
I wouldn't even say this empathy. I'd say sympathy. Because there's more of the focus on personal responsibility.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this doesn't mean you want people to be destitute, or you don't help people, or you're not charitable, or anything like that. But that, I mean, if you look at a lot of certain movements, lots of movements, they tend to come. If you look at something like take something that's relevant, but it's a little bit of a silly one, something like fat acceptance. Okay, that would never come from the right side of the political spectrum. You see?
You had a great quote. When
Okay,
you said,
so it's like-
you had a quote and you said something like, "I've never met someone that was in shape who was." What did you say? Oh, it was such a good tweet. I'm sorry.
I can't. I'm not even sure I put out so many.
You said something like, "I've never met." Was it an entrepreneur? I've never met an entrepreneur you said something like, I've never met someone who was in shape that wasn't conservative.
No, I don't think I said.
Or the opposite.
I think I said maybe I've never seen someone who's like a raging socialist who's.
Yeah. It was good. I thought
something
that
like
was a
that.
good point.
Yeah.
I'm obviously big on the personal responsibility.
Yeah, sure.
I think that is a lot of it. I think deeper than that. I'm more interested in how do we help people who've experienced trauma, whether personally or whether collectively. How do we instill belief in them?
Yeah, sure.
Like I'm more into that.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that totally. I think my approach, and I'm like my approach in anything is not for everyone. I always tell people, like, if you just want pure sympathy, you just want me to feel bad for you for your own crappy decisions, I'm a terrible person to come to. Okay, I'm a terrible person to come to. If you've accepted that you've made those and you now want to make a genuine change, I'm a great person to come to. Okay, like if it's like, okay, you take if someone is obese and they want to make excuses about how it's the fast food company's problem, or it's because of the corn syrup, or it's because of their bad genetic, like, I have no time for it. Like, you can go and complain to someone else, go whine to somebody else. They'll, I'm not the one. If it's like, I've let myself get out of shape, I want to make a change, I need the advice, I need the instruction, I need the motivation.
Yeah.
come to me. I will help you. That's why I wrote my book.
Yeah.
Right. But I can't do anything until nobody else can do anything until a person has decided. You know, if someone smokes, you can't stop someone from smoking until they decide they want to stop smoking.
Yeah.
You can't get someone to lose weight until someone wants. So once people have made that first step, then and you know you need both sides. You do need people who are more emotional and feely and are, you know, super sympathetic and are willing to, you know, look, people, all kinds of different personalities and viewpoints exist for a reason, because you need all of those things in humanity, and no one is all of them.
Sure.
You know, nobody is all of them.
Sure.
So I can't be all things to all people, and I don't kind of try to be.
Yeah.
You know, like if
and I think that's fair.
Yeah, you know, we were sitting in you know, we were both listening to Gary Vaynerchuk today. Okay, that was a very tough love message.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? He wasn't there like making excuses for, oh, you know, I know it's difficult. I know it's. He was like, no, shut the F up.
Yeah.
And do it.
Yep.
Right? And some people don't like that.
Yep.
You know that. Some people don't like Gary because they say, oh, he's abrasive. Oh, he's not sympathetic enough. He's not. And it's like, dude, I love that.
Yeah. No, same.
But some people, it'll rub some people the wrong way.
Yeah.
Other people, it'll be like, yeah, that's right, actually, you know. So.
No, I think you're right. I think, you know, in my relationship with food, I had to understand why I was using food to soothe, why I was using, and I think my buddies who start to go to the gym with me and start to like move the needle in their fitness, there it comes a degree of like, let's just talk and let's figure out, why do you comfort eat? Like what is that trigger? And sometimes I think just helping somebody get that clarity can be the beginning of liberation to make better choices, logging their food, going to the gym, being more active. So like, I think you're right. I think it's both.
Yeah, it's both.
I got, and I think that's ultimately the solution, right? Like empathy and honesty.
Yeah, because
right?
look, sympathy by itself is awful. In a lot of cases. There are cases where it can be fine, but if you just give people nonstop sympathy, then you can just, you know, firstly, you can enable a lot of really bad behaviors.
Yes, absolutely.
And that person just becomes reliant and makes excuses and never, you know, take the worst situation possible. Take the worst situation possible. Say somebody's, you know, say a close loved one dies. Okay, taking you know, one of the worst things that can happen in someone's life. Okay, of course, everybody will offer sympathy. However, once you're past a certain period of mourning and grieving, if you know, there's a reason people don't mourn and grieve for 10 years straight, right? Like in a world of, if it was just pure, like you, at some stage, people have to be like, look, you gotta
move on.
You have to move on. That doesn't mean you're diminishing what happened, or you're not sympathetic to it, or whatever, of course, or that, you know, you might not have the occasional thing and need a little bit of comfort or something like that. But ultimately, in that person, they have to understand, look, at some point, like, life goes on. I've got to keep living. I can't let this thing happening. I can't, the fact that this thing happened completely ruin the rest of my life. I can't just be sad forever, you know? So it's a little bit of a, so with anything else, because I'm using that because that's kind of like a really, really terrible thing. So with something that's sort of less serious in terms of dwelling on it, it's like, okay, you can do that for a while, but at some stage we've got to move forward. You know, we've got to move forward.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of what I'm attempting to do with this channel in terms of giving people practical stuff, financial literacy. That's a lot of what you do. I think this has been a super dope conversation. It's going on an hour, so I only got one question, one last question for you.
Go for it, bro.
What's it going to take to get you to join the Yang Gang? Come on, man.
Okay.
Come on, man. What the Yang Gang, man?
What would it take, man? I'm not even American. I don't know why people want me on the Yang Gang.
I mean, you know, we talked a little off the record about you considering relocating, you know what I mean? Not that you would get to vote necessarily, but, you know, from a moral support, you know, what would it take to get you to join the Yang Gang?
What would it take? Probably maybe some policy changes.
Okay.
I'm largely a policy guy.
Okay.
Like, I think Yang seems like a good dude. He seems like the kind of guy to be happy to hang out with and have a good conversation. You know, I'm sure we'd get on and stuff like that. There's a lot of politicians who are like that.
I'm assuming you're not a fan of the UBI.
I do have a lot of questions about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm highly skeptical about it.
Okay.
I don't think it's a terrible idea for some point in the future. I don't think that I think it's too early. And I don't know if the world and automation is going to necessarily go the way people think that it will. I have a lot of questions and doubts about it, but it's such a new and radical idea, to be honest, that I'm someone who's honest enough to put up my hands on some things and say, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
So I have my skepticisms and my questions and my concerns about it, which haven't totally, some of them have been alleviated to a degree, but not all of them. And hasn't really been tried in a whole country. I think it's been tried in a little part of
tried in Stockton.
places.
They've had it in Alaska for a while.
Yeah, I think it's been tried in certain little places, but yeah, I don't know. It's a whole new experiment. In terms of other stuff, like I don't know all of the policies. But what would it take? That's a good question. I don't know, like because I'm not I don't like being part of any. I'm not in any political. I don't like to be stuck in any box. That's why I'm not like some people may say, oh, like he's he's pro-Trump or he's this or he's that. I'm like, no, I'm not in any of these.
Yeah.
I'm not in any of these boxes.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like.
Because you understand nuance and you understand.
It's nuance. There's literally no. Firstly, I don't think that politics is. In some ways, I don't think it's that important in terms of the nitty gritty, in terms of in terms of who is
in office,
the leader and who's. It doesn't really change people's day-to-day lives so much unless something super crazy happened, like they started a war.
Yeah, and I think probably more so on a local level, it's more important.
Exactly. And most people don't know who their local politicians are, but everybody knows who the president. So it's the whole thing is a little bit. It's a little bit backwards in that regard. So yeah. I don't. That's probably not a great answer.
Nah, you're good, man. It was more of a. It was a fun question.
Yeah,
any final? Of course, we'll link up your stuff in the
sure.
in the description and all that kind of stuff. So make sure you guys are following Zuby. Any final closing thoughts?
No, man. I mean, I would just encourage people to do what we're doing. Have these conversations. Listen to these conversations. Form your own mind. Don't be afraid to voice your opinions. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to say you don't know. Go out there. Fulfill your potential and be great.
And don't be afraid to have people in your life that you disagree with. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's okay to have people in your life you disagree with, and it's okay. Like everybody don't got to agree with you on everything. So appreciate having you on, brother. This was super fun.